It began in March of 2023, though I didn't know it at the time. I was tired, but that wasn't unusual. I chalked it up to stress, to the long days, to age maybe. But then something shifted. I started waking up with swollen hands. My ankles looked like they belonged to someone else. My brain felt slow, heavy, not just tired, but fogged over. I couldn't put on my flip-flops, and I remember one day looking at my hands, resting on my desk, and realizing they didn't even look like my own anymore. The blood pressure spike came out of nowhere. Over the next year and a half, I saw doctor after doctor trying to determine what was going on in my body. And a year and a half later, I ended up in the ER and the ICU with stroke-level blood pressure. The diagnosis that followed, MOG antibody disease, was terrifying. An autoimmune condition that affects the nervous system. Inflammation, pain, fatigue. It felt like my body had turned on me. But here's the thing. I don't believe MOGAD was the origin. It was the consequence. The real culprit, mold. Invisible, insidious mold exposure had quietly set off a chain reaction in my body that took months to unravel. I remember the moment I found the mold. It was almost anticlimactic. A black marks through the shower of an Airbnb in Miami. Just a few days after arriving in Miami, I was coughing and swelling and couldn't breathe in the space. That small presence was releasing mycotoxins into the air, disrupting my immune system, triggering inflammatory responses, destabilizing my vascular system. My body was not broken. It was reacting to a real ongoing threat. And when I understood that, I could finally start to heal. For those who haven't lived it, it's hard to explain how profoundly mold can affect your health. It's not just sneezing or itchy eyes. It's a full body hijack. Mold exposure can lead to chronic fatigue, neurological symptoms, brain fog, headaches, hormone disruption, and in cases like mine, autoimmunity. The difference lies in the toxins mold produces, called mycotoxins, and how your body processes them. Most homes in the US have some mold. That's not always a problem. But certain species like stachybotrys, often known as black mold, and others like aspergillus or penicillium, can produce toxic compounds that, when inhaled or absorbed over time, accumulate in the body. These mycotoxins interfere with mitochondrial function, your cell's ability to produce energy, and suppress immune regulation. In other words, mold exposure doesn't just make you sick, it dismantles your ability to get better. Research has shown that chronic mold exposure impairs natural killer cell activity and can dysregulate T-cell balance, both critical elements of immune defense. It also affects neurological pathways, contributing to memory loss, mood disturbances, and neuroinflammation. In some people, the result is a slow, simmering decline in resilience. In others, like me, it lights a match under a genetically loaded immune system and triggers autoimmunity. The hard part is mold-related illness often goes misdiagnosed. Traditional medicine may see your symptoms as isolated events: hypertension, fatigue, brain fog, without connecting the dots. That's exactly what happened to me. And the longer the root cause stays hidden, the more complex the health picture becomes. Mold doesn't just stay in your sinuses or lungs. Mycotoxins circulate. They bind to fat tissue. They cross the blood-brain barrier. They impair your liver's ability to detoxify. They inflame your gut lining. They linger. But here's what I need you to hear today. It's possible to clear mold from the body. It's possible to recover. But it requires a specific, stepwise process that supports your detoxification systems, not just throwing supplements at symptoms. And it starts with understanding what your body needs before it can begin releasing anything toxic. When I finally connected the dots between my symptoms and the mold in my environment, I thought I could just get rid of the mold, take a few binders, and be on my way. But I learned very quickly that the body doesn't work like that, especially not after a prolonged toxic exposure. The first principle I had to embrace was this: detox is not the same as elimination. You can't just pull toxins out of the body without first ensuring your detox pathways are open and functioning. Otherwise, you're just stirring up trouble. And that's exactly what happened to me early on. I took binders too soon. I pushed too hard, too fast. And the result was a Herxheimer reaction. Headaches, fatigue, worsened brain fog, even more inflammation. My body wasn't ready to let go because it didn't have anywhere to send the toxins. So I backed up. I started with drainage, supporting the routes that toxins use to exit the body. That meant focusing on the lymphatic system, the liver, the colon, the kidneys, and bile flow. These aren't glamorous steps, but they are the foundation of sustainable detox. If you skip them, your healing stalls. I began with hydration. I aimed for 80 to 100 ounces of filtered water a day, always paired with minerals to support electrolyte balance and cellular uptake. Without proper hydration, your lymph can't move, And if lymph stagnates, toxins get trapped in your tissues. Next came lymphatic movement. Gentle rebounding, dry brushing in the morning before showers, castor oil packs over the liver 3 to 4 times per week. These aren't trendy wellness hacks. They're old, tried and true practices that literally help your body move waste. I kept movement light but consistent. Daily walks, stretching, light yoga. Movement is what pumps lymph fluid through the body. Without it, detox grinds to a halt. Then came liver support, not in the form of aggressive detoxes or trendy cleanses, but through gentle, consistent nourishment. I brought in N-acetylcysteine, NAC, and liposomal glutathione, 2 of the most important supports for phase 2 liver detoxification. I also focused heavily on food: beets, dandelion greens, arugula, bitter herbs. These support bile flow, which is essential for moving fat-bound toxins like mycotoxins out through the stool. And speaking of bile, I had to support my gallbladder. Mycotoxins are processed in the liver and excreted into bile, but if bile flow is sluggish, toxins get reabsorbed. That's enterohepatic recirculation, and it's why some people feel worse on binders. I used bitters and phosphatidylcholine to keep bile moving and made sure my bowels were regular before introducing anything that would mobilize toxins. Only after I had done all of that did I bring in binders, and even then, I went slow. My go-to was a rotation of activated charcoal and bentonite clay. Binders work by grabbing onto toxins in the gut and preventing them from being reabsorbed. But if they're introduced too early or without supporting drainage, they can lead to serious setbacks. One thing I wish more people understood is that mold isn't just a toxin problem. It's a nervous system problem too. Chronic exposure to mycotoxins keeps the body in a state of hypervigilance. It dysregulates the vagus nerve. It impacts the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis. So part of my healing had to include nervous system retraining. I practiced breathwork daily, simple, grounded techniques like box breathing, or extended exhales to signal safety to my brain. I integrated cold exposure gently through contrast showers to retrain my stress tolerance. I built in daily downtime, no screens, no productivity, just time to reset my system. And I paid attention to my sleep. Mold exposure can wreck circadian rhythm, so I anchored my sleep-wake cycle with morning sunlight, dimmed lights after sunset, and used magnesium glycinate at night to support parasympathetic tone. None of these things are magic pills. They are consistent supports that allowed my body to do what it wanted to do all along: heal. I wasn't forcing detox. I was creating the conditions in which my body could release and rebuild, gently and gradually. Alongside this, I layered in emotional work. Chronic illness doesn't just live in the body. It leaves a mark on our thoughts, our patterns, our sense of safety. I journaled every morning, not to fix anything, but to let the grief move through. I allowed myself to feel the frustration and fatigue. And then I chose again and again to show up for my healing. Healing from mold isn't linear. It doesn't respond to quick fixes or detox in a box protocols. It responds to presence, to wisdom, to sequence. When the right systems are supported in the right order, the body finds its way forward. And for anyone walking through this process now, I want you to know this. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. Your body is responding to something real. And there are real tools to help you recover. It's incredibly easy to make mistakes when you're desperate to feel better. I see it all the time. People jumping straight into detox without any preparation, trying to muscle their way through with the latest supplement stack or a protocol they found online. I did it too. In those early weeks, I thought more was better. More binders, more supplements, more effort. But when your body is already overwhelmed, more can be the very thing that stops healing in its tracks. One of the biggest pitfalls is assuming that binders are benign, that you can just start taking them and the toxins will magically disappear. The truth is, binders don't work if your bowels aren't moving. If you're constipated, those toxins that get pulled into the gut just sit there, and the body reabsorbs them. That leads to headaches, fatigue, anxiety, skin rashes, even joint pain. It feels like you're getting worse, not better. And that discouragement can make people stop too soon or give up entirely. Another major mistake is skipping environmental cleanup. Detoxing your body while living in a mold-contaminated space is like trying to dry off while standing in the rain. If you suspect mold in your home, you have to test and remediate. Whether that means running an ERMI test, hiring a mold inspector who uses proper tools, or even temporarily relocating, your external environment must be addressed. You can't out-supplement an ongoing exposure. Then there's the myth of the one protocol, the idea that there's a single magic approach that works for everyone. Mold recovery isn't one size fits all. Your symptoms depend on your genetics, your immune profile, your toxin load, and your current capacity to detox. I've seen two people exposed to the same building respond in completely different ways. That's why personalization is so important. What works beautifully for one person might cause a flare-up in another. There's also a deep emotional pitfall that doesn't get talked about enough. The belief that your body has failed you, that somehow you're weak or broken or too sensitive. I carried that for a long time. I felt betrayed by my body. But the more I learned, the more I realized my body wasn't failing. It was protecting me. It was signaling that something was wrong, even when the outside world didn't see it. That shift in perspective was one of the most important parts of my healing. We're not taught to trust our symptoms. We're taught to suppress them, override them, numb them out. But healing from mold requires the opposite. It asks you to listen deeply, to partner with your body, not punish it for being overwhelmed. And when you do that, when you slow down, support the right systems, and respect the signals, your body responds. What I've come to understand is that recovery isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about learning to read your own signals and respond wisely. It's about building capacity, layer by layer. It's about stepping out of survival mode and into trust. So if you're navigating mold illness, or if you suspect it might be behind your unexplained symptoms, here's what I want you to remember. Mold is real. Mycotoxins are disruptive. They affect everything from your mitochondria to your mood, but they are not permanent. Your body has incredible capacity to recover when you give it the right sequence of support. Start by making space. Create space in your nervous system, your schedule, your routines, so healing can happen. Support your drainage pathways, your liver, lymph, bowels, kidneys. Only then bring in gentle binders. Prioritize food, rest, hydration, movement. Remediate your space. And always work with someone who understands that detox is as much about calming the system as it is about clearing the load. You don't have to live in fear of mold forever. You don't have to stay stuck in survival mode. You are allowed to recover, and you're not alone. If you're listening to this and wondering where to begin, start simple. The first step is awareness, not just of what mold is, but how it might be interacting with your unique body. Mold illness isn't always obvious. It doesn't always show up in labs right away. But when you begin to notice persistent inflammation, brain fog, unusual fatigue, or immune instability that doesn't resolve with basic support, it's time to investigate deeper. Step 1 is to test your environment. Your body can't heal if it's still being exposed. Consider an ERMI or Hertzmay 2 test to assess mold levels in your home. If you rent, look for visual signs, musty smells, water damage, or any place where moisture may have collected. If testing isn't an option right now, trust your symptoms and start supporting your body while planning your next move. Step 2 is to support drainage before detox. This is foundational. Start by hydrating consistently, ideally with minerals and filtered water. Add movement every single day, even if it's just a walk or gentle stretching. Dry brushing in the morning before a shower. Castor oil packs on the abdomen or over the liver. These are simple, low-cost ways to get your lymphatic system moving and prepare your body to release toxins safely. Step 3 is to regulate your nervous system. This is the most overlooked but most essential part of recovery. Breathwork, just 5 minutes a day, can reduce sympathetic dominance. Prioritize rest. Protect your sleep at all costs. Mold disrupts the body's rhythms, so reclaiming your circadian pattern is a major step in healing. Morning sunlight, a consistent bedtime, and intentional winding down can shift your entire baseline. Step 4. Introduce binders slowly and strategically, not because they're dangerous, but because your body may not yet be ready to handle what they mobilize. Use guidance if possible. Begin with food-based binders or gentle clays. Make sure your bowels are moving daily. Without that, you're recycling toxins. And finally, step 5, get support. Whether that's a practitioner, a mold-literate coach, or a community like the Living Simpler Collective, do not try to go through this process alone. Healing happens faster, more safely, and more sustainably when we're surrounded by people who understand. Inside the collective, we dive into real protocols, real-time troubleshooting, and mindset tools that keep you anchored when things get hard. You don't need a perfect plan to begin. You just need to begin. Your body is not broken, it is brilliant. Even in its most overwhelmed state, it's working to protect you. The healing process isn't linear, but it is possible, and it's yours. You are allowed to feel better. You are allowed to trust yourself. You are allowed to simplify your healing, and you're absolutely allowed to live a life that feels whole again.